And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Defense Academy. I want to thank everyone for returning from yesterday's programming, or if you're here today and weren't here yesterday, then welcome to Defense Academy. We had a great first day. We heard from AFWorks. We heard from the FedTech program about a bunch of different Army innovation programs. We heard from Naval X. We heard from Russ Long of Long Capture with a deep dive on the SBIR open topic from AFWorks. And then, of course, we learned about Capital Factory. Brian, please take us to the agenda for today. So today, we're going to hear first from Sarah Brinkerhoff from Accenture Federal Services. I will introduce her shortly, but then after that, we're going to get Bill Robinson, who's going to talk about how to get to a phase 3. So we've been talking about SBIR phase 1, and then during phase 1, building a good phase 2 proposal. But that's not really the whole point. The whole point is that you want to ultimately get that phase 3 contract. The beauty of the SBIR program is that if you win an SBIR phase 1 award, you basically have a license to go to a non-competitive contract award with any government agency for 10 years. So let that sink in for a minute. Non-competitive, direct to phase 3 contract award with any government agency for 10 years. So Bill Robinson's going to talk to us about how to do that. And then we're going to hear from Rick Lipsey. If you guys participated in Fed Supernova, you saw Rick give an overview of this Texas cybersecurity ecosystem. He is the president of Alamo AFCEA, and he's going to talk to you about why or whether or not you should join an industry association. So moving right along, let's go ahead and bring up Sarah while we're waiting for her slides to get sorted out. We've had a little bit of a snafu this morning, but that's okay. We can just kind of talk through an intro.
Hi, can everyone see me?
Yeah, they can see
you.
Awesome.
All right.
So good morning. So Sarah Brinkerhoff is the director of the director of the Small Business Liaison Office at Accenture Federal Services. Sarah's small business program has earned an exception rating from the Defense Contract Management Agency for the past 3 years. She's been with Accenture for 19 years, serving both the commercial and federal clients in the SAP practice prior to moving on to small business advocacy. I want to especially thank you, Sarah, for being here on kind of short notice because we just got you, I believe, linked into this on Friday. So thanks for joining with us. And let me ask you a question. Is this your first time? Okay. Is this your first time doing an event in StreamYard?
It is.
How many virtual events have you been doing?
This is probably my 4th one this season since the pandemic hit, and the 4th platform. So
well, good.
Well, we've been all going to learn new skills and be very adept at this in about a year, I think.
Well, there we go. Well, it looks like we're going to have to go forward without your charts because for some reason we don't seem to have them. But Sarah, thank you very much. And the floor is yours.
All right, thanks. So I'll talk, just my slides are pretty, they're not very dense. So I can pull them up and I'll go through my notes here. So thanks for the intro. I am the Small Business Liaison at Accenture Federal. And we are a IT services company, and we partner with small businesses in a range of different ways. But basically, they're involved in every project that we do at every cabinet level agency. 64% of our subcontracting spend goes to small businesses. And in an average year, my team on the small business team, we meet 700 to 1,000 companies. And each year we engage with like 250 to about 300 small businesses. So that's just to give you a kind of a flavor of the scale that myself and some of my large competitors are looking at when we're looking at businesses. So in meeting a lot of small businesses, I answer a lot of the same questions a lot of times. And I see a lot of the same challenges that people have breaking into the federal market. So I wanted to talk today to folks around, if you're either breaking into the federal market with an existing business or just trying to break into federal contracting as a newer small business, where does that fit in? how do you do that? How do you engage with large primes that you would want to be a subcontractor with? How do you prepare for a meeting with them? And what are some additional resources what are some additional resources that are available to you? So, all right, we'll go from there. It looks like, okay. I can't tell if that's on my screen or your screen. All right. So one of the biggest misconceptions I think folks have is, where do subcontractors and teaming partners come into the partnership relationship with a large company? And one of the things I often tell people is, when you see that my company got some huge award and it's in the Washington Post or it's in some industry blog, that is not the time to call me. But I guarantee if my company wins a large IDIQ or there's a big award and it makes the news, I will get cold calls. And so unfortunately, that is not the time to join the team. When you join a team with a large prime, really exists kind of along a continuum from the pre-RFP stage. Then the middle stage is, when the RFP drops through proposal submission. And then the other end of the spectrum is the post-award phase. So where you join a team really depends on what role you're playing in the team. But I'll say the vast majority of subcontractors are joining the team right around the time that the RFP drops through the proposal submission. So when the RFP drops or right before it drops, that's when we're really together our team. An exception to that would be if we are the incumbent on a large program that's coming up for recompete. You can see the large primes are going to be looking for any restructuring that they need to do on their team about 12 to 18 months before that recompete happens. So that's just to give you a sense of kind of the pre-planning. If you are a company that has a proprietary process, an innovative product, where you are looking to be a value add partner, and you would have probably a dedicated statement of work where you are managing and driving a piece of that program. In that situation, you are going to be joining the team pre-RFP, very, very process. You can be involved in working with your partner to go to clients and kind of shape the offer of staff augmentation company. Then you might be joining the team post-award, especially if the team thought and they have a need to kind of flush out their team with different skills or different technologies. So where you join the team along that continuum, it depends a little bit on the opportunity, but also depends on what kind of role you plan on playing on the team. But again, the key thing there is really in that magic window between the RFP and the proposal. I would say 75–80% of folks are joining teams at that point. Their relationship with another company. It's about building relationships early and understanding the landscape and understanding the market so that you are either ready when the RFP drops to have those discussions, or that you're already having those discussions because you know which companies and which agencies or which programs might be a good fit for your company. If that makes sense. All right, we'll keep going. Let's see here. I think my slides might come up, so we might get this pulled together before long. So connecting large primes, the biggest, another misconception I get beyond, when you can join the team understanding what you bring to the team. So let's see. Understanding like what your company brings to the team. So when I am having an initial meeting with a potential teaming partner, if the first thing out of their mouth to me is, I'm a veteran-owned small business, or I'm HubZone, that is usually not a good sign to me, because your business size, your economic category, not your value proposition. We want companies that know their technology, that know their business, and that have great client delivery first, right? Achieving the outcome of the proposal, and delivering on what we said we were going to do, that comes first, right? And then while we always strive to meet or beat our small business goals, I need companies to be delivery first, and then all those other all the other socioeconomic categories and the things that help me and the small business side hit my goals, that's like icing on the cake. But the priority is to deliver to the client. So I'm really looking for companies that have a strong understanding of what it is that makes them unique. Another thing I like to tell companies, if they sit down and I say, well, what type of opportunities are you looking for? And they start telling me basically, we can do everything. That's another kind of mistake at the beginning, because if you're selling everything, you're selling nothing. Because if you can do everything, it doesn't really give me, it doesn't give me a specific hook, connect you to people within my company that might want to work with you. You just become kind of a general player. And so it doesn't, there's not a natural fit for me to, find that connection for you, if that makes sense. And then, so that, the message there is to really focus on what your company does that is unique, that makes you special, and that differentiates you. Like, what do you do better than anyone else? And that is really what's going to help you kind of find the right opportunities where you're going to be successful as well. At the beginning, I introduced myself as a small business liaison. A key thing when you're meeting with other companies is to really know your audience. So I might have the title SBLO, so Small Business Liaison Officer, or and all the other large federal primes are going to have folks that have that same title because it's something that's defined in the federal acquisition regulations. But not every SBLO is the same. And we all sit in different parts of our organizations. So for me at Accenture, I actually sit in the subcontracting and procurement department, which I like to think is a nice hybrid between the dual function of my role, which is that it's part reporting and compliance and part outreach and business development. But you'll find out that my counterparts at other companies, some of them are in the compliance department, and some of them are in the sales and the business. And the type of connections that they'll have within their company, the types of things they're looking for when they're talking to a company, that will differ based on kind of where their focus is. And so I always tell folks, I usually give people kind of a 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch on how my company buys when they sit down to talk to me if they don't know us very well. But I always tell folks, when you're meeting with a new company, especially a large company that might have a very bureaucratic structure, just ask the person you're talking to kind of where they fit in their company, so that are you talking to a program manager that that can give you a contract? Are you talking to a salesperson? Are you talking to someone like myself who is interested in small business partnerships across my whole company? So kind of understand who you're talking to and where they're coming from. And that'll help you understand maybe what kind of information they're looking for from you. and what type of connections they're going to be able to set up for you. Another thing that's important to ask is to ask folks how they buy hardware, software, or services. Whatever it is you're selling, ask them how do they buy that. Again, because every company is organized differently. My company is organized by agency. And so if you come to me and you say, I have a great innovative way of delivering Salesforce and I want to be on Salesforce projects. Well, that's great, except that I don't have like a distro list where I can just blast people and say, hey, here's a great Salesforce company. The way my company is organized is by agency. So if you tell me, you know, hey, I did this really great innovative thing at Army, and I think that there is some application to do something similar at Navy, then I can say, yeah, I can hook you up with my Navy team. So I'm organized by government agency, and that's the easier way for me to connect people, is by what agencies they might be a good fit to work with. But other companies might be arranged by technology. So you should ask and then help tailor your pitch to the information that is going to allow that person to connect you to the right people within their company that are going to be able to give you opportunities. And then lastly, when you're trying to make that connection, make sure you understand what your next steps are in that process. For us, I always ask people to send me an electronic copy of their capability statement and then register with my supplier portal. About 50% of people I meet at conferences and events actually send me an electronic capability statement and follow through. So, you know, that is a key thing right there, is if you want, it doesn't have to be, you know, within an hour of the meeting, but in the next 48 hours or so, if the person you're meeting with has asked you to do something, please follow through, because I'm always shocked by the number of people who I feel like I have great discussions with, and they're very enthusiastic, and it seems like we might have a fit there or might have some opportunities, and they just never follow through. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, my team meets 700 to 1,000 companies a year. So I'm not going to chase a company that doesn't follow up with me. So I'm going to take a moment and see if I can get my slides to open up. Maybe we'll be lucky. All right. All right, well, that spins. I'll go on to my next section. So talking about finding opportunities, I feel like it's a little bit of a riddle that every company is going to have to solve their own way. But you know, when I say that you need to be finding companies to work with kind of pre-RFP, if you're just starting out, that can be a really confusing thing, because how do you know what the opportunities are until the RFP drops? So in that trying to solve that that puzzle there, you know, the first thing to ask yourself, I think, is, does a market exist for what you're offering? If you're creating some innovative new solution, a new software product, a new process, if it's something that no one's heard of, you might have to go out and kind of create a market for your offering, obviously. And that's something where, you know, finding the right partner that has a foot in the door at the agencies that you think might be a good fit for might be what you're looking for. So then you're going to want to look for, obviously, companies that have complementary technologies, or companies that have contracts in the agency, in the department, or at the program that you're interested in, because they're walking the halls, that can then maybe get you a seat at the table to explain what it is that you have and what value you think it can bring. if what you have, if there already is a market for the thing that you're selling, the key thing there is to really understand, do you know who is buying what you are selling? So FedBizOps, GovWin, USAspending.gov are all great resources. They can't predict the future, but you can reasonably predict that people who bought similar things in the past are going to buy similar things in the future. So you can go out and you can use this. I would say, get familiar with searching on FedBizOps and what the offerings look like, and get familiar with downloading data from USAspending.gov, because there is a wealth of information in there, and you can see who agencies are buying from, what they're buying, was it awarded as a small business set aside? So you can see all kinds of information there. So I would go out and kind of play with that. If you do have specific socioeconomic categories like women-owned or veteran-owned, in USAspending.gov, you can see, where agencies are awarding, on set-asides for those as well. So leverage that as kind of the past predicts the future. And then as far as understanding like what's coming up, a lot of agencies will do procurement forecasts. So you can see those either on an agency website overall, or they're often kind of buried in their website under the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So that's OSDBU, and we pronounce that OSDBU. So the OSDBU offices often will present a procurement forecast. And different agencies are better at keeping those up to date than others, but that's always a good place to look. And if you don't see anything, or the OSDBU's website seems a little bit out of, it doesn't seem updated, you can always just email them. That office, their job is to work with small businesses and to get small businesses either on contract with that agency or partnered up with large primes working for that agency. And then finally, working with large prime contractors. It depends a little bit on the industry that you're dealing with. In defense, if you're looking at large programs where they are, building infrastructure, weapons, equipment, those programs tend to know what they need, and they tend to know it long in advance. And it's not a secret who is going to propose on those efforts. And so the opportunities in that realm tend to be a little bit more public, and they tend to have more things like industry days and opportunities for, to pull together potential suppliers. For me on the services side, services is very fast moving, and we don't usually go out to market and announce what we are going to propose on before we submit our proposals. So companies often come to me and they say, "Oh, do you have a list of like what's coming up?" And no, I don't have a list. My competitors would love to see a list if I had a list of what I was bidding on coming up. But what I can provide, and what my counterparts at other services companies can usually provide, is I can either tell you kind of like, hey, here are the hot buzzwords that I'm looking for this year. These are the skills I'm hearing a lot of requests for. And I usually can tell you whatever my top 10 NAICS codes, like what are the top 10 NAICS codes that we purchased in the last year. And I usually pull that right before I go to any sort of like large networking event, so that I know kind of up to date, this is what we're buying right now. Let's see. All right. I think I'm going to be able to get my slides up. Let's see if I can do this. And bring them over here. And close that. Bear with me for one moment. And hide my presenter view and share my screen. All right, how's that? There we go. We got some. We have some slides. There we go. So this is what I was showing you about the RFP timeline and where most folks join our team. We went through, is there a market or do you need to create one? And I think that the team will send these out afterwards. So, knowing your audience is really a big one for me. Obviously knowing who you're talking to is going to help you target your message. And that leads me into kind of what is Accenture looking for in a subcontractor. So the number one thing as a large prime, the number one thing that we're looking for is past performance or agency insight and relationships. And and the reason there is that I think that I'm really not alone in speaking for some of my my competitors of a similar size. If it's an existing market, an existing product, we can do most things kind of in-house. What a subcontractor or a teaming partner can bring to us that we don't have is past performance, relationships at an agency or within a program, within a department, where we don't have where you don't have a foot in the door, right? Or some insight into the things that are driving that agency and their priorities and their business issues. So again, if you're just starting out, that's probably, I think, a frustrating message, but I don't want it to be. Your first federal contract probably won't be with Accenture or Deloitte or Booz or CACI, but there are a lot of I'll call them smaller, larges, or mid-sized companies that you can partner with to build up your past performance and get your foot in the door. And there's also small business set-asides, going after something that is an appropriate size that your business can tackle and be successful with. So there are a lot of ways to kind of build up your past performance. That doesn't mean to say that nobody ever gets in the door with a large prime without past performance, but it definitely helps. But I would say if you don't have past performance or some sort of relationship to the agency or to the system, that's where, if you are kind of a startup with like a really new innovative thing, that would be one of the ways that you would have an exception, is that, you have this like hot new thing that's like, that no one's ever heard of and that we're going to go out and create a market for. So those are kind of the top of the list, though, of things that when I'm pitching a company internally when I'm pitching the company internally to my program managers and the folks that are, choosing who comes on their program, that's what they're looking for, especially if you are coming on prior to the proposal being submitted, right? Because oftentimes we're looking for a story where we can say, this is the team we've assembled and this is how our past performances and our experiences complement each other to bring you the best of the, the best solution possible. So complementary capabilities, obviously, if there's something that a large prime does really well, and you basically do the same thing, there might be some opportunity to be a staff aug type position, but we're looking for, we're often looking for subcontractors that have expertise or experience in areas that are not our wheelhouse, that we need to create that full solution for the client. We're looking for responsiveness. So this gets back to the, if I meet a company at a conference and they don't send me their capability statement, that's usually a bad start. But if a company is reaching out to you to do an NDA or a teaming agreement, they're looking for you to be on their proposal team. During that process, we're looking for companies who are responsive and paying attention to the details. It feels like you shouldn't have to say that, but you would be amazed at the number of companies who just aren't responsive or don't pay attention to the details, or don't respond in a timely manner. That is kind of just not a good start to what we would like to be a long-lasting mutual relationship. And lastly is stability. We are definitely looking for companies that are going to be around when the contract is awarded, when the task orders start being competed. Basically, like the life cycle of federal contracting is long and slow sometimes. So we want to know that a company is going to be financially stable and still around and ready to work with us 6 months or 8 months or a year later in some cases, depending on the procurement. So, okay. And all right. So additional resources. I am based in the Virginia area, so I am biased, but there are these groups, the PTAC or the PTAP, some of them, Procurement Technical Assistance Center or Procurement Technical Assistance Program. I'm biased. I think Virginia is the best of all of them, including DC and Maryland. Do you think that DC and Maryland would be similarly kind of like plugged into the federal market space, just given the geographic area? But for some reason, the Virginia one is just very active, and they have a lot of webinars around a variety of federal contracting topics. And a lot of their resources are free. So I always pitch them as a place, if you're trying to make sense of the federal contracting landscape, as a place to go and look. And another one that I really like is, and I never know how to pronounce it. I think it's Polero Maza. But they're a law firm based in the DC area, but they have a blog and they have a newsletter, I think called Legal Minute, that you can sign up for. And they are usually on top of any sort of new small business or federal contracting regulation. And they also offer frequent free webinars on a variety of topics that impact small businesses and small business contracting. They're a good resource, and they often have a point of view on just about any small business topic that you can think of. As far as networking events, I know so different OSDBU offices do these with a different amount of quality. Everyone is kind of on hold right now. My hope is that folks are going to kind of come over to the virtual side of things and get that pulled together soon once they figure out how to do that. I know that some of the large industry groups, like the Women's Chamber of Commerce, have already kind of crossed over to start having virtual events. So hopefully the more active OSDBU offices will as well. I know this group is focused on defense, so you might think a little bit funny, but I put DHS, so Department of Homeland Security, Treasury, and the State Department. And you'd say, well, why do I want to go to a small business event at Treasury? And the answer is they often will publish who is going to be there as far as the large businesses for their events. And DHS and Treasury usually have monthly events, and State Department has fewer events, but their events tend to be very large. So the reason I call that out is because for the large primes, if that's who you're looking to talk to, when I go to a Treasury event, I'm not just there to talk about Treasury opportunities. I'm there to talk about any opportunity across the landscape of my company. And the other large primes will tell you the same. So don't hesitate to look for events that are outside of your target agencies if you think the companies that you want to talk to are going to be there. If you can't see on their website what companies are going to be there or what companies have been there in the past, reach out to the OSDBU office. I guarantee you they have people who work in their office whose job it is to tell you who's going to be at that event or who has been at past events. So you can have a good sense if that's going to be a good use of your time. And also those events are free, right? As a small business, time, money is money, but time is also money. So, the last thing you want to do is pay hundreds of dollars to go to a conference and there's nobody there that you want to talk to. In defense, the big industry days leading up to like a large IDIQ or a large program are a little bit more common. And then lastly, there's a company called GovMates. They're actually sponsored by a bank that does lending to small businesses. So that's kind of where they're coming from. But GovMates is a matchmaking service, and it's free to register as a business with them. They actually make their money both doing lending and then also sponsoring matchmaking at large conferences is how they make their money. And kind of like the inside baseball on GovMates is that when a large prime has a tricky niche to fill where they can't find the right subcontractor, GovMates will let us submit an inquiry anonymously as opposed to like going out to the market and announcing what exactly it is that we're looking for or what exact opportunity we're chasing. So so large primes do use it in that context, and that they can kind of mask what we're looking for if we need to put out feelers beyond our own personal network, but we don't really want to make an announcement in public about what we're looking for. And then industry groups, looking for industry groups that, again, finding the industry groups that are the right fit for you and the people that you want to talk to. But some big ones, NDIA Triad is a group that does advocacy on small business and diverse business contracting topics. And their meetings happen twice a year and usually include folks from government, folks from the small business liaison world, such as myself, and then small businesses. ACT has a lot of events in the DC Metro. I'm not sure how active they are outside of DC Metro. And then if you do have one of those socioeconomic categories that you're affiliated with, you can find something that is specific to your group and can help you out there and connect you with other like-minded businesses. All right, Kevin, are we at time? Because I think that's just about everything I have.
Couple of questions, and I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Great. Great. So one thing I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper is you talked about past. You said, Accenture's going to look at somebody who's got a unique customer relationship or access, or someone who has past performance. And those two things kind of seem hard to me. On the one end, a unique customer relationship or access may exist as a
Yeah.
result of a program. If
Mhm.
they've been pulled in through an AFWorks challenge or through one of these other innovative programs that's specifically targeting startups.
Yeah.
Um, but also on past performance, I mean, one of the things that I consistently see from our partners, and again, this is about really startups being able to access these DoD innovation programs,
Right.
because those are the ones that are specifically targeting them. And most of the folks that I encounter from Army Applications Lab, from X-Tech, from AFWorks Challenges, from AF Ventures, from whatever, they're all very proud of the fact that they're pulling in companies who have never worked with the DoD before.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that is a new metric that people are reporting, is how many new companies who just got a cage code so that they could apply for your opportunity did you see
Mhm.
on this solicitation or on this announcement. So with that in mind, like, what describe past performance for me? What are you guys going to be
Yeah.
looking?
Um, so and that's an interesting point you bring. And honestly, I've seen that from the Air Force a lot in the last year. That not even just on the innovation programs, but on like big programs, doing systems implementation, we're getting requests from them for what they call non-traditional suppliers, which to them means somebody who's either never worked in the DoD or hasn't worked in the DoD in the last year. And so that's new to me, in the way that we track. But when I say past performance, if it is a large proposal and we're looking to bring on somebody that has past performance as a key role, that's one thing. But for the most part, when I say past performance, basically I'm looking for a hook. And that it could be like as far as past performance or some sort of relationship or some sort of connection. I'm looking for a hook that's going to help me get the program manager or the business development person in my company interested in your company. Does that make sense? So if I just say, hey, I just met a company out of the blue and I don't know anything about them, then, but they seem nice and they have good marketing materials, that doesn't really, I need something. And it could be something like, hey, he used to work with Bill at this other company, or he used to work at this agency or used to work at this other company and we've done work with them. So it's just looking for some way to create a connection. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
fair. Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
Yeah.
what you're saying isn't exactly the same thing, but it's related. It's in the same room with kind of what we were talking about yesterday with the open topic SBIRs, um, and the volume of solutions that they're pulling in on those, and the number of proposals. They don't have time to do tech evaluation. Like what you're describing is effectively,
Mhm.
I haven't done due diligence on this company. They have a capability that seems to be a fit. It seems
Mhm.
interesting. Like, how do we assess the ability of this company to perform, or the validity of what they're doing? And so
Yeah.
the one of the ways that the Air Force is doing it now is they're looking at what they call commercialization. Like, do you have a
Mhm.
commercialization strategy? Do you
Yeah.
have you demonstrated commercialization in that you have 2 or 3 enterprise level customers who are paying software licenses to use whatever your tool
Mhm.
is. And in that, we can determine effectively, without doing specific tech due diligence, without doing tech
Mhm.
evaluation, because we may not be specifically set up to do that. We can just look at how the market's consuming your product and who your customers are, and kind of do it that way. I mean, that's the way the Air Force is handling it. Um, the way you're describing is really more about relationships, which really is business drives on relationships, right?
And it
So
probably depends a little bit more on kind of what role a company's gonna play on the project, right? If you're coming in with this, like you have a component, this innovative component that you're bringing, and the large prime is gonna handle all of the kind of bureaucracy, right? We might be looking for less we might be looking for a different kind of, like you said, like technical capability. Whereas if we're bringing you in a partnership relationship where you were going to ask you to, you're expected to be driving a piece of the program, Then we're looking for past performance. There is less of the technical capability, and it's understanding that the company can bring the technology, but also kind of operate in that federal space with all of the rules and the bureaucracy. Because a lot of companies, I think, really know their technology and they're really great and innovative, but then they struggle to perform well in the federal space just because there's so much, there's a lot of rules and a lot of like just weird stuff to deal with, right? A lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah, fair. We could go down a completely separate rabbit hole on this, but we have at Capital Factory, we have this group of big enterprise level companies that we work with, called the Innovation Council. And one of the things that they come to us for is like how to be innovative and how to work with small businesses. And then they want to find small businesses with the right technology profiles. And one of the things that we're always telling them is like, it's not their job to deal with the bureaucracy. That's your job. Help them get through the bureaucracy and eliminate as much of that bureaucracy as you can between yourself and that company. And the example I always like to give as a reformed attorney is, don't put more attorneys on the project than they have people in their company, right? Which is something that easily can happen. So moving along onto some additional questions. So you mentioned about going to networking events. And so the question I have is, what is the profile of a person? Like if I go to a Capital Factory event, right, and I see there's folks there from Lockheed Martin and BAE Systems and Northrop Grumman and Booz Allen and blah, 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 blah. Like what's the profile of an individual from one of those companies that I should be looking to connect with as an entrepreneur? And if it's not the person who's in the room, which is most likely a business development person or an account manager, what is the person that I should be asking them to connect me to?
So that gets back to the whole like, ask that company how they buy, right? So I usually kind of give people the intro of, this is how we buy. We buy by agency, right? So a person might come to me and they're ready to launch into this 5-minute, very technical description of what they do. And I have to be like, whoa, I'm not a technology person. Right. But I want to help to connect you to the right person. So I'll help steer them. So
that's, that's something we tell our companies all the time. And so really interesting and really funny. We did this innovation combine for the Army, and there were these really like technical hardware companies, like companies that are doing like novel application of polymer materials to build out chassis and hulls for combat vehicles, like really like hard engineering and science stuff. And we're teaching some of these companies like how to do an elevator pitch. Like if you're going to get a chance to talk to somebody in a networking room, they might listen to you for 30 seconds. So you need to get the right message across quickly. So what is that right message for that person, for that business development person? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I always want to know like, what agency do you want to be at, and who do you want to talk? Like basically, like, is there an agency that you want to be at? Is there a program you want to be on? So I'm kind of like looking like, who do you want to meet with? So one of the, I think it's always coming up with like, what's the specific ask? What do you want? Right. And I think that the key thing, right, is just to figure out, what does that person that you're talking to, who might be somebody from like marketing or procurement, that what do they need to connect you to the buyers, or ask them, who are the buyers in your organization? So in my organization, the ultimate buyer is the program manager, right? The program manager or the client account lead for that agency that's your ultimate buyer. And so your question is, how do you get past me to get to that person? Right. And that is, I think, getting me the information I need to get somebody interested in you. And that's where I'm looking for that 1 or 2 sentence hook of why should my Air Force lead want to talk to you?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, you want to maximize your time and you want to use those networking
Yeah.
events effectively. In fact, we have a networking event happening at the conclusion of today's Academy blocks. So another question that I have that somewhat relates back to the reducing the bureaucracy between the
Mhm.
big company and the small company. There are certain things that your company would require of a small business to come on board as a vendor, and many of those things are going to relate back to FAR disclosures, and again, those things you described, which is, does your company have the professionalism to be able to work with the DoD?
Mhm.
So can you describe that a little bit? Like, what would a company expect if they're going to come in as one of maybe two or three partners or teamed companies on a contract that Accenture is delivering, a service or a product enabled service, technology
Right.
enabled service to a customer?
I mean, so like you're gonna get a standard NDA, right? And then we're gonna have a talk about, so like we'll talk in general terms, but then you usually sign a standard NDA with us, and then following the NDA, you get a teaming agreement. The NDA is exactly what it sounds like. It is us agreeing not to share, proprietary information that we share with each other. Our NDAs are typically mutual. So once you get through that, your teaming agreement is defining, now at that point we're saying we want you on our team for this proposal, and the teaming agreement is kind of like the precursor to a contract or a subcontract. The subcontract incorporates the terms of the teaming agreement. The teaming agreement is really laying out what role the other company is going to play with us on the proposal. So and it will spell out, if we have agreed on work share, what role you're going to play on the proposal team. Are we going to use you as key personnel? Are there certain things that we're looking for? If we're saying that we're bringing you to the table as a small business and somehow you're going to graduate and not be a small business before we get to contract, we need to know that. So we're going to go through kind of those kind of things up front. But typically when you get a teaming agreement, you will also get a copy of the reps and certs and the subcontract agreement that you would eventually be asked to sign. So you'd have them there to review, and you aren't necessarily having to like sign away right at that point, but you can ask for them at that teaming agreement point to kind of know what the large business is going to be looking for from you, and kind of look at that and make sure that it's something that you're comfortable with. Don't just sign away without reading it. But then different companies do things differently. At Accenture Federal, most of our deals, especially with folks that you're talking about in your audience today, every deal is a standalone deal. We do master services agreements and rate cards and things more in the area where we are doing staff aug, right? If where we're just bringing in bodies. I need 10 Java programmers, right? That's the type of relationship where we're looking for more like a master services agreement, a set rate card. Whereas, in the types of opportunities that you were discussing, we would be negotiating each of those on an opportunity by opportunity basis. But
Got it.
a large prime should be able to provide their reps and certs up front. We do not publish ours right now on the internet, but I know a lot of our competitors do, and you can actually go to their website and look at like their small business website, and some of them will actually publish their reps and certs for you to review before you even talk to them.
Cool. So one more question before we go into break. There was a question from the audience about like a success story that you could share, like an example of a company that would explain like how a company works with you guys. And the specific question was, example, a small business that won an SBIR with the Air Force, and then you were able to connect them into your Army division and take that contract and move that into a new customer or something like that.
I actually don't have any success stories from Cybersitter yet, but our technology labs actually reached out to me, and I told Kevin this yesterday. they reached out to me last week, and so I know that that's something to ask about it. I know that's something that they're definitely looking at getting us more integrated with, those more early stage innovations. But as far as small businesses, every year we have a handful of businesses that we meet out of the blue at a conference, or that we get a cold call from, that eventually get a end up on a subcontract with us. I would say probably 15 to 20 a year are really like truly like cold call, no relationship to subcontract. And a lot of those companies go on to become long-term partners. T-Symmetry is actually now a large company. They are a company that started out as our protege in a mentor protege program. Then they became one of our go-to hub zones, and now they have graduated to large business status. And so, that is like a relationship that happens over years. But there's companies. Once a company kind of gets into the ecosystem at a large company, we tend to use the same company over and over again. So it's really about kind of getting in there, proving yourself in delivery, and then broadening your horizons. But we definitely are always looking for opportunities to take a company that's performing really successfully in one part of our organization and help them branch out to other agencies.
That's fantastic. So, as I tell our companies, always be prepared to give your pitch. I will tell you, the pitch in response to what you have just described, which is, it sounds like it's a little bit inefficient in the way that you guys maybe connect to companies, and it might even be a little bit more the difficult barrier to entry, which is why you would keep going back and using the same company over and over again. So I'm going to renew my invitation for Accenture Federal Services to have a better conversation with Capital Factory about how we can help you guys find more of those companies faster and integrate them quicker. Because that's what we do with our partners. And so I really have appreciated the relationship that we've had with Accenture that's been getting better and better over the last couple of years, and specifically over the last 6 months, with you guys participating, Bill Marion and specifically participating with us in the Fed Supernova program and the Texas Cybersecurity Ecosystem Showcase, also curated by our friends at AFCEA, at Alamo AFCEA, who are up next. So thank you very much, Sarah. We're going to go into break. Cool. We're going to go to break now for about 8 minutes, and I'll see everyone back here at 1:10 with Bill Robinson. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Defense Academy. Our second block is going to be with Bill Robinson, and he's going to talk about how to get to a Phase 3 contract. You've won that Phase 1. As Russell mentioned yesterday, really the Phase 2 is the thing everybody's trying to get because it's the first big real chunk of money, 750K, even in some cases up to about $1.5 million. But really the so what of the SBIR program is you want to get to Phase 3, and you don't even have to do a Phase 2 in order to get a Phase 3. And so Bill's going to tell us all about that. Bill Robinson is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Frontier Technology Incorporated. He's a retired Air Force senior non-commissioned officer who specialized as a cyber professional on many federal government contracts. Bill assists FTI growth into new strategic markets using the Small Business Innovation Research SBIR Phase 3 program. He's also a vice president with Alamo AFCEA, vice president of memberships, I believe, and a graduate of the San Antonio and Bexar County Master's Leadership Program Classic. So, Bill, with that, thank you for joining us. Good to have you. And the stage is yours.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And sorry I missed some of the presentations yesterday. Obviously, the job took over some parts of it. But obviously, this community here, the Small Business Innovation Research, is a lot of startup companies' first entree point into the federal government contracting. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to navigate. You only learn a little bit so much that you get brought into. So I'm hoping to take a few minutes of your time today and tell you a little bit more about the whole process and maybe paint a bigger picture for you and show you ultimately the road to success. I'll go to my slides here and advance them. A couple things we'll talk about over the next few minutes is a little bit about the SBIR program itself for those companies that actually have gotten a SBIR Phase 1 or maybe even considering responding to a SBIR Phase 1. By now, hopefully, if you've been in that process, the government's working with you to do a SBIR Phase 2 based on what part of the SBIR program you're actually coming through, and I'll talk about that. And then, if you've got that, now what? Now that you have it, where does that go? And ultimately, of this 3-phase process, we'll talk about some of the attributes of a Phase 3. Hopefully, telling you a little bit more you may not have heard about yet, and why, by staying the course, it'd be worth you getting to Phase 3 and keep working on that process. And then hopefully, road to success. So a little bit about a company that I work for. I work for Frontier Technology Incorporated. The SBIR program has been around since the early 80s, actually the mid 80s it got started, and FTI was on the ground floor of doing that. We've been responding to SBIR technology requests from the government, and we've built a number of technologies, been very successful over the years, proposing this or that, whatever our scientific folks who are part of our company was able to respond to whenever there was a government customer had a need for a capability. We were able to prove them a concept and then take it through prototyping. And we've been very fortunate to have over 160 Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards. I know that's a lot. There's been a lot of companies that wish they could only get their first SBIR Phase 1. But we've been doing it for 35 years. And many of our SBIR technologies have advanced from Phase 1. They've gotten to Phase 2. Then they've gotten multiple Phase 2. And as you'll see, based on the investments from the government, as well as our company, we've matured our technologies to the point now that we actually have gone past what's called the Valley of Death and actually gone into SBIR Phase 3. We now have a solution set of technologies that become the mainstay for our 28 SBIR Phase 3s that we have today. We've been down this road a number of times, obviously, through the process, and I want to pass on a little bit of information that we've acquired along the way that maybe that'll help out some of the SBIR Phase 1 companies that are just starting the process. So on the chart up here, I wanted to kind of paint a picture here at first and kind of level set. The SBIR program itself, as you can imagine, started in, as I said, in the mid 80s. picture Silicon Valley, Ronald Reagan. How do I get these leading edge technologies into the government? This was the government's entry point for creating a road for small businesses that are doing leading technologies to get their capabilities in. And to have, it starts with government customers actually proposing through a basic or broad agency announcement, a BAA that is out there every year. It gets published 3 times a year. And with government agencies and program offices listing, hey, what they're struggling with, and allowing companies who might have a concept or capability to tell them more about it, right? So they post it, and many federal agencies do this. There's actually 11 federal agencies that do it so much they've established their own program. But this is a program run by the Small Business Administration. It's available for any federal agency, and the program was designed to help bridge the gap between the need and the desire. And so government customers have put forth requirements, companies propose, they'll review the latest edition, and I think the BAA has got 20.3 is about to go live, if memory serves me correctly. It may already be out there in draft form to tell you what other aspects of the government are struggling with and where they could use your technologies. And it starts at that point. If you respond to one of those and you're fortunate enough to have your capability selected by the government, you may be awarded a SBIR Phase 1. Now, I'm going to stop here real quick. On the regular DoD, as well as all the federal agencies, have a standardized practice for the SBIR program. A couple of years ago, in 2017, when AFWERX stood up, they've been leading the way to really speed the acquisition of SBIR technologies into the Air Force. And they're doing a great job. You've heard the press, you're probably a part of that process, where if you've got a capability, they're helping you get to SBIR Phase 1s, and even doing a lot of things like the colliders, the spark colliders that I know the Capital Factory puts on, bringing venture capitalists and government customers together with SBIR 1 companies and helping to take it to SBIR Phase 2. But that one is a little bit speedier process. It's modified. It's not what you see on the slides here. The dollar amounts, please don't compare the two. The AFWERX program has a little bit smaller and faster. This is what I have presented here is the typical DoD BAA one, just so you realize there's more than what AFWERX is doing for the Air Force. Other federal agencies have the same process going as part of the BAA. So, but anyways, the SBIR Phase 1 is if you get one of these, they liked your concept, your idea, they gave you some money to tell them a little bit more about how you could solve their problem, and then those are presented back to that government customer, and usually from there they'll usually down select a one company to do a prototype, do a demonstration of that capability, that proof, do a proof of concept, whatever it happens to be. 90% of the SBIR world is a widget of some type, but that's only 90%. The other 10% is software solutions. So if you've got a software capability, this process is still the same. But now AFWERX is helping to find other venture capitalists and other funding to help you, government customers, to actually get to a SBIR Phase 2. I was just on a call with my friends at the Pacific Air Forces, and they put out a notice of a bunch of SBIR companies who have a SBIR Phase 1, and they're trying to find customers to match your technologies with their needs. And so they're really advertising a lot of that stuff. So it's really great to see a lot of folks talking about SBIRs, because it was a quiet program for a lot of years. So it's really advanced a whole lot. But if you're lucky and you get a SBIR Phase 2 and you've actually proved out your concept or your capability, you've actually delivered it to the government as a prototype or a proof of concept, which you got funding for, and which, as Kevin mentioned, could go all the way up to 1.5 million. And you got a SBIR Phase 2, that's great. At that point there, that's where the SBIR program is helping you with funding. Government customers never paid for the phase 1 or the phase 2 funds that you received. That is all part of the SBIR program and the SBA managed aspect of that. But SBIR phase 3s are money that comes from the operational side, non-SBIR funds. And this is really where what they call the valley of death. A lot of times the SBIR program, the technologies were developed, they were proven out, but the end customer just didn't have the funding at the time to be able to buy that capability, rent it, if you so to speak, with the services aspect of that. And they had to go find the money. And sometimes they found other ways or in order to get to that same capability. So a lot of those technologies went on the shelf. And a lot of companies have some great leading edge technology out there that just never went anywhere because that one particular customer didn't have the funds. But I'm going to show you a couple of little known tricks on the SBIR side of it that may be able to help advance that. Down the bottom of this slide is just to show you that 3 of the DoD services, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, they all have a SBIR program. And they do it so much that they've stood up a SBIR office. And so there's resources there that you can reach out to on each of the services to help you advance your technologies and get advice on where to sell your capabilities. So let's say you've got a SBIR phase 1, and if you're lucky, you got a SBIR phase 2, and you actually got to prove that out to the customer. And what happens if the government customer doesn't have any more funds at this time to take your capability and bring it any further? What else can you do? And so a couple things, I'm sorry for the wordy slide here, but basically there's ways of maxing out the phase 2 effort. Do you realize you can have a total of 3 SBIR phase 2s with that same customer? They can go back to the well if they like your technology and your capability, but it doesn't just fit the need just yet, or maybe their mission has changed slightly and they need your capability to be tweaked to go this way or that way. There's a way of putting in a enhancement bid to go back to the SBIR program, get additional funds, most times matched by that SBIR program office, to allow your technology to then be tweaked. You might get another 8 months, a year or so to tweak your capability and come back to the table and showcase it again, or whatever that need is. There are, as Kevin mentioned it earlier as well, the Commercial Readiness Program, or sometimes known as the Commercial Readiness Pilot Program. Every federal agency that does SBIRs kind of names it a little bit differently, but they have programs to help you get your capability transitioned to the warfighter by working with them and advice from them in order to guide you on, well, that's great, but for our organization, we needed to do this. You may have shown it to one customer, but now they see the need for it on the bigger platform, and you may get additional funding. So phase 2 is not done with just with that one customer that you got you. There's a way to actually enhance that even further and get more money. Some organizations actually have transition partner pilot sites, right, where the customer can add more money to a phase 2 and basically go back for matching funds as well. So every federal agency does it a little bit differently. So I'll recommend that if you want to know the latest on SBIR phase 2s and some of the new things, you want to check with that federal agency. I know the NDAA in 2018 was modified. Some of the pilot programs that were supposed to end, it got reinvigorated. So if you were one of those, go back and take a look at it. You may be able to continue getting additional funds to take your capabilities to the next level. If you're working with the government today, like AFWorks and so forth, and they're finding you a customer that might want your capability and to do a proof of concept, a demonstration of that through a SBIR phase 2, just know that it doesn't end with just that one customer. There may be ways to go back and take that. Let's say you found something to work with Air Education Training Command, and you started something with them. And through discussions, you realize that the folks at Air Combat Command could probably use that. Well, here's a way to, that's another transition partner, take that same capability, that same SBIR Phase 1 award, and then you can go back and use it for that particular customer in a different area. So there's a way of advancing your capabilities and technologies to the point where it can be used by multiple customers. And as I mentioned, you can go up to 3 SBIR Phase 2s being awarded on that same SBIR Phase 1. Remember, everything ties to the first award. And Kevin also mentioned, too, that if you've got a SBIR Phase 1, or even with AFWERX, you saw the publicity on some of the notices, they now have advanced programs where it's direct to Phase 2. So if your capability is already advanced, you don't need to talk to them about the concept and do another 10-page report or a white paper about the capability. You may already have this, let's say it's a medical device and you're using it in Europe right now, and you're answering a response to a DoD health customer today. You're obviously your technology is way past the Phase 1. Then go straight to Phase 2. Go, hey, bring it in here and show me how this works. So there's a ways to, even if you don't get a Phase 1, to go directly to Phase 2, and vice versa, right? So there's folks, there's programs out there that can help you advance your technologies. But the ultimate goal then is to actually get onto a Phase 3. But what is a Phase 3? This is what everybody wishes that they could get, right? And the beauty and the whole value of doing a SBIR program is if you got a technology, advanced technology or capability that the government wants, SBIR Phase 3 is funded through non-SBIR funds, which means it's not funding for ones and twos, okay? And what you find here is that's where your end customer, the actual warfighter organizations themselves, if we're talking the DoD, those organizations, it's their money. They have to want your technology. But the beauty of this, unlike what Sarah was referring to when you're working with prime contractors, SBIR Phase 3 is a contract that's a direct to you. You own the intellectual property. And because it was built through the SBIR program, and that's the key, because it was built through the SBIR program, that government customer can write you a direct award contract. A direct award contract to you. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. But that's something that most other competitive companies only wish they had that capability. If you've got that, stay the course, because there's a chance of being able to take your capabilities direct to the warfighter, which is what it's all about, right? But these Phase 3 contracts, you'll find, is any color of money, okay? It can be R&D funds, it can be O&M funds. It is, and I've got another chart that's going to show you some features and benefits there. But just know that it is non-SBIR funds in order to get to Phase 3. And that's why most of the organizational customers today don't know that much about the SBIR program, because a technology has never been made, or they've never found a technology through the SBIR program that they can come directly to. And so a lot of organizations are starting to learn how to do direct award SBIR Phase 3 contracts. Okay. Any other, as I mentioned, a SBIR Phase 3 is a sole source direct award. And what's great about that is, since it was built through the SBIR program, if your company is still a small business and you're using a small business NAICS code, then that organization gets small business credit automatically by giving you that direct award contract. And what's important for them is they got competition credit. And a lot of these laws were recently updated in 2015. I know my company, my CEO, Ron Schroeder, was part of a effort to brief Congress of, here's some of the pitfalls that the SBIR program is or kind of hampers for companies who've got their technologies. The laws had changed 2015, 2016 that made it a lot easier for the government to get to those companies with the intellectual property through a SBIR program. So those organizations now get small business credit and competition credit, which is usually not necessarily so in some of the direct awards, other direct award programs. So some of the attributes here, and I want to leave a little bit of time for some questions. So I'm going to get through some of this information here, but a few key attributes for a Phase 3, and this is really what the meat of the matter here is: there is no limit to the number, duration, type, or dollar of a SBIR Phase 3. They can buy as much as they want, as long as they want, in any style they want. If you're the one who has the intellectual property, you have the SBIR Phase 3 capability. They can come directly to you to be able to buy this. They don't have to put it out for contract. It doesn't have to be an 18 to 24 months procurement where source selection and protest and down select. No, they can come directly to you and get that technology and put it into the hands of the warfighter a lot faster. Like I mentioned before, small business size standards only apply to a SBIR Phase 1. Like you have to be a company of 500 employees or less in order to bid on a SBIR Phase 1. But you'll find even large businesses, let's say Accenture, may buy a small business that has a SBIR award. Well, if that technology is advanced enough, Accenture can get a direct award contract because they bought that SBIR company. But since they're a large business, that government customer is not going to get small business credit. That's the difference. So the longer you can stay a small business with your SBIR technology, the better chance you're able to do more SBIR Phase 3s. Any federal agency can do a SBIR Phase 3 contract. Even if you propose, like in this case here with AFWorks, you did a SBIR Phase 1, you got a SBIR Phase 1 award through AFWorks, and you just happen to do business development and you're talking with the folks that maybe it's COVID-19 related and the folks at the National Institute of Health or NASA or Department of Treasury or whatever, they can go directly to you can use them to talk about a SBIR Phase 2, cross-agency, cross-programs, or you can, even if it's advanced enough, they may be able to go directly to Phase 3. Any federal agency can enter into a Phase 3 contract at any time with a Phase 1 or a Phase 2 awardee. And I say Phase 1 only if your technology just happens to be advanced and ready for them to buy. But if it's got to be proven out and it's not tweaked enough, then that's what SBIR Phase 2 is. And that's not bad either, because then they may sponsor you so you can go get additional funding to advance your technologies. So it's a great way to continue Phase 2s and then possibly leading to a Phase 3. Sometimes probably what you did with AFWorks, you might have delivered an unsolicited proposal or a white paper or that capability. You've met them at a small business conference or something, and you told them about it and you delivered them the marketing material. They could afford you a contract if it's ready to go directly from that. A lot of customers will come to us today and say, Bill, I need help with this. Can you give me a white paper on that? And that's what starts the conversation to get to a SBIR Phase 3 contract. So the door is kind of wide open when it comes to this. Of course, every intellectual property company worries about their data rights. And I'm not a lawyer, and so I'm not going to quote you the legal data rights. Take a look at the laws, read the SBA policy on this. But basically, from what I understand, your data rights are protected for the next 20 years based on that technology, which is great. Sometimes SBIR technologies are actually embedded into weapon systems, and that's where you have to be careful about your code and your capability, and definitely work with the lawyers to have that protected and make sure the government's protected as well. Teaming partners and so forth that might have access to this. So you definitely want to look at your data rights when it comes to that. And a little known fact too is you can actually get a Phase 3 contract through a government prime contractor today. Doesn't always have to be directly from the government to you. For example, maybe there's a NASA program you're working with, there's a prime contractor building the Mars rover, and that program needs your capability. Well, the government customer can direct them. They'll put money on that contract to turn around and they'll issue you a SBIR Phase 3 contract directly to you for that capability, that technology. So what Sarah mentioned, working with the primes, talking with those prime contractors and bringing your capabilities out there, you never know where that conversation could possibly go. So road to success. How do you get there from a Phase 2, right? What I would recommend you do is definitely start with your Phase 2 customer. I mean, talk to them, find out if they have any follow-on requirements, find out if there's a way to tweak that technology, that capability, and take it to the next level. It may have started this way, but you could possibly go another direction with that. Talk to them. Reach out to the other federal agencies. I mean, any one of them, but the 11 federal agencies that have a SBIR program, they've got a SBIR office. And sure, those offices are staffed for the phase ones and phase twos, but they can give you advice on who to talk to in their agency that might need your capability for a phase three. You could talk to those program advocates. Any government small business advocate, every federal agency has a small business advocate. Go talk to them and let them know, give them your capabilities as a, this is what a typical DoD small business would do anyways. So if you're a startup company and you're building your capabilities deck, you can go out to their webpage, find the small business advocate. That's your front door to be able to go in and call on them, tell them what you got, tell them what you want to do, and they'll give you advice, maybe connect you with one of their program managers, and maybe you get a technology briefing and find a need for your capabilities. And as Sarah mentioned too, prime contractors, other teaming partners, any others that are in the federal space that do competitive contracting, they need your capabilities. The government needs leading edge technology today, especially more than ever. So if you've got something advanced that you think the warfighter needs, we want to know about it. They want to know about it. And if you're not sure where to look, if you're new to the DoD aspect of federal contracting, and this SBIRS is your first entry point, and you're trying to figure it all out, go to the small business, the small business agency, the SBIR policy directive. Read through that; it tells you everything about the program. And what's even great now, there's two good references I got up here on the slide, and that's the Air Force Phase 3 desk reference and the Navy Phase 3 guidebook. Two wonderful guidebooks on doing Phase 3s to help your government customer understand why they can get to you. So hopefully that was a little bit of information to help guide you from going from whether you're in the phase 1 or if you've got a phase 2 on to phase 3 and be able to take your company to the next level and the next level and then become one of those large prime contractors like Sarah was just talking about as Accenture and others that you know. I appreciate your time today. Kevin, back over to you for questions or.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. One of our companies has asked, they've won a phase 2 or they've won a phase 1, and they actually were selected for a phase 2, but not awarded a contract yet. The Air Force did an interesting thing off of their COVID Directive Phase 2 20.R solicitation, where they received a whole bunch of proposals on the Directive Phase 2 solicitation, and then they identified a lot of products or a lot of proposals as selectable but not awarded, and then they reserved the right to award, I think, within 4 or 6 months after that fact. But anyway, the question is like, how do I go to phase 2 if there's other bases or other installations that want to use their technology? How do they go to phase 2 with multiple different installations?
Yeah, so what I understand is a SBIR Phase 1 award, whatever that was, what was clearly defined in that Phase 1 award contract, you can have up to 3 SBIR Phase 2s that directly relate to that technology and that capability, right? The hardest problem is your SBIR team or your technology team in your company may only be these 2 or 3 people. And if they're currently delivering for, let's say, ACC, and now you find Global Strike wants it, can you do 2 SBIR Phase 3s at the same time? Because you only get the same 2 people. You're building that technology or you're advancing it through the Phase 2, taking that and tweaking it to fit ACC. Do you have the time to put in another package back to the SBIR office to get a SBIR Phase 2 for Global Strike? Because they may want it at the same time. So that's really on you and your company. But yes, you can. You can take it, relate it back to that one. If it's a totally different capability, then that was never awarded in the SBIR Phase 1 program, and you can't do that.
So my understanding was specifically on the AFX, which is the AFWERX open topic, they only allow one Phase 2 off of a Phase 1.
Yeah, AFWERX is totally different, right?
Yeah.
They've advanced it, they've innovated the standard program. And I guess that's my point today. Understand this has been around since the 80s. The program and the process is already in place. All federal agencies do that. But what's great about that long process is organizations like AFWERX is speeding it up. So go
Yeah.
back to them, get the updated rules on what they can do for you, and understand there's two different. AFWERX is not necessarily representing the Air Force or the DoD BAA. Just be glad you got an organization like AFWERX that is really advancing it faster.
Yeah, so actually, and that's a great comment, giving the wrong answer in the context of that specific question is actually very informative and instructive, right? Because the reality of it is these programs are extraordinarily different, and you have to understand the rules with respect to the program that you're specifically dealing with. And as a startup, when you're asking that question, so Allison's who asked that question, you have to actually refer, if you want to get help from a guy like Bill, or if you want to get help from a guy like me, or some of the other folks, you actually have to let us know which SBIR you want, because the solicitation rules are going to be different on each of those. So that's super important to know. My advice would be on that would be, a couple of different ways. One is, if you have a phase 2 proposal that goes in on an AFX topic specifically, they're going to have a team that's going to review those solicitations, and they're going to tentatively select. So they're going to recommend for selection and contracting, and then they kick it over to contracting. Contracting determines basically, are you eligible? Did you meet the requirements? And then they'll award a contract. Well, and they also have to have funding left, and they'll award a contract. So but you don't have to submit a different phase 2. If you've got 3 different installations that want to use the product, then just write the milestones to broaden the scope, right? Have multiple customers hooked into that. I mean, that's kind of one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is you can have a lead customer, whoever your strongest customer is, maybe one that's going to kick in some of their own funding. You can have that customer lead, and that be your phase 2 customer. And then you can ask some of these other installations as separate customers to come on as a phase 3. So there's tons of different ways that you can get after that. So let me ask you this question. How do I find a phase 3 customer? So I saw on your last slide, or maybe it was your second to last slide, it's like, start with, your phase 2 customer, and then, go around. But the reality of it is there's a couple of obstacles that I see. One is a lot of organizations don't actually understand that there's this marketplace of technology of you have companies that have won SBIR phase 1s that they can actually go and do things with. If they do understand it, they don't actually know how to contract it. And then from the company side, it's just doing customer discovery and business development is hard. What types of individuals should they be looking for?
Yeah, I was going to say, you asked for a list of SBIR phase 3 organizations or companies. And man, if I had that list, I'd be a millionaire and wouldn't have to be punching the time clock, right? But every government agency has the potential for your capability. But say, for example, you built a SBIR technology through the SBIR program, or a cyber technology through the SBIR program. You can only sell to the cyber office, right? No one else in that organization is going to buy it. If you do something with logistics, then the cyber people are not going to buy it. So you have to go to the logistics people. You got to understand that federal agency, what they do, what their mission is, and whatever your technology is, find that organization that could use it. I think that's what Sarah was referring to before. In this case, this is what I do: is I go and look and talk to program managers, small business advocates. Small business advocate to me is my biggest, because that's their job, is to help me identify where there's a need in their organization. Some of them are good at their job, some of them are not so good. But I try there first, and then I look for those missions that can need my stuff, and I try to find that end customer. I wish there was a quick chart to tell you, but there's not.
Good stuff. So let's see. There are a couple of questions. I've been answering questions in the chat, but I may want to get a second opinion on some of these. So one of the companies may be more than 50% foreign owned. So any advice for a company like that?
Yeah, the SBIR program is quite specific. You cannot be foreign owned, and so if there is the possibility of that, or if there's influence in any way, really get the advice of the SBIR program office in the agency you're trying to respond to, in order to get into the SBIR program, because you're going to have to prove it anyways when you first respond to a SBIR phase 1, and everything could stop right there.
Yeah, and I go through this with some of our companies from time to time. there are companies, we're seeing companies from, India and from a few other locations. Actually, Canada, it, happens fairly regularly. And we'll have companies that'll form a wholly owned U.S. subsidiary. Parent company will retain 49%. They'll create, shares of stock for investors and whatnot, and then have U.S. persons running the U.S. based operation. That's if the company really has a really interesting technology, and that company is going to do extraordinarily well, and they're going to get a hook into DoD business. I think it makes sense. In other situations, it doesn't necessarily make sense, because effectively you're creating a new entity just to go try and win $1 million phase 2 contract. Obviously, that's always a personal decision for the company whenever they decide to do that. If they want to license their technology to form a separate entity, license the technology to that entity. When really, all they're trying to do is go and win a phase 2.
Yeah, Kevin, I would tell you that if you're a small business with foreign entity and you started a wholly owned subsidiary in the United States, all that's typical stuff, that's fine. There are many, many small business programs for companies like that to get into DoD federal contracting. Okay. SBIR program is going to limit that. So don't look at SBIRs. You can just be like the rest of us. We all started as a small business somewhere. We got into federal contracting either through a subcontracting, as Sarah had mentioned, or other avenues for my capabilities, get on teams to be able to be part of a competitive procurement. You don't have to use the SBIR program for that.
There was one other question in here that I wanted to get to, and now I can't find it. Oh, yeah. So one of the questions was, what's the typical time for DoD organizations to evaluate an SBIR phase 1 proposal and make award selections? And then should you expect a delay when you're going on to contract after that?
Wow. I haven't been involved with the phase 1s and phase 2s aspect of the SBIR program, but I know in the BAA, at least if you follow in the BAA, not the AFWERX model, they clearly have those timelines lined out to give you that advice. And I bet AFWERX probably has the same thing, that if you put it in by this date, we're going to make awards by this date. And then, of course, going on to phase 2, that's the hard part, trying to match it with the customer. But if you went through the original program, it starts with the government customer who's asking for it. So you automatically have I won't say a speedier process, but you have a customer helping you drive those requirements.
Awesome. Well, with that, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. We are running late a little bit, but really good information, and we kind of compressed you and Rick anyway. So thanks for coming. I assume that you're going to hang around and do the networking, but if not, it was really good to see you again. And let's bring up Rick. So thanks for joining us, Rick. It's really good to see you. We're always happy. I'll just say we're really happy that this partnership with Alamo AFCEA is growing and getting stronger, and we really appreciate your assistance. And I know that our audience is going to appreciate what you have to say. So Rick Lipsey is the president of Lipsey Cyber Consulting, and since 2016, he's also served as the president of Alamo AFCEA. He previously served 28 years in the U.S. Air Force, retiring as a vice commander of the 24th Air Force, which is a component of the United States Cyber Command. And this is my favorite part. Rick is in the Air Force Cyberspace Hall of Fame. So thanks, Rick. Please educate our audience on, as professionals, what they should look to in a professional association.
Absolutely. Will do, Kevin. Thanks very much for the opportunity. And we really appreciate Capital Factory and all that you're doing to bring innovation to defense, because it's so critical to our national security. So as Kevin mentioned, again, I came out of a 28-year career in the military. Professional development was something that was drilled into my head as a young lieutenant back in the day. But it's not something that everybody thinks about. And so I want to address that a little bit and talk about what do we mean by a professional association, and does it make sense for me to get plugged into one of these or not? So let me tell you first about the primary association that I'm affiliated with. AFCEA International is a member-based nonprofit, and it appeals to folks who are in the IT business, to folks who are in cybersecurity, and to folks who are in intelligence. And the primary mission is to provide an ethical forum for the exchange of information. Anyone who's dealt with the government knows that government folks, and particularly military folks, get nervous every time they have to talk to a contractor because they don't want to get in trouble with their contracting officer. AFCEA exists to help bridge that gap. And so we provide an open forum that makes it easy for military, other government agencies, academia, and industry folks to all get together and have a conversation. Because let's face it, wherever we're going as a nation is going to depend on new and emerging technology, innovative processes, and the like. We also provide professional development for our members. So as someone's starting out, they've got to acquire some initial skills, and maybe they need a certification. Along the way, technologies and processes change. So there's a need for continuing education, and you have to stay current on what's the latest tech, or how do we integrate that. We also provide thought leadership for those who are outside the industry about what are emerging trends. From a scale standpoint, there are 140 chapters of AFCEA worldwide, mostly in the United States, but also in some friendly countries, with about 32,000 members. I'm the president of the chapter here in South Texas. We are the largest chapter outside the National Capital Region. We have about 1,300 members. And in addition to the professional development and in professional engagement things that I described, we also do some charitable work. So as a nonprofit, we're not allowed to pocket money that we make over and above our expenses. But what we do is we give back to STEM education through an education foundation, and we give to wounded warriors and military families through a Wounded Warrior and Military Family Endowment. We have been growing, and so over the last 10 years, we've given back about $1.5 million to the community, but this year alone, we're coming close to $300,000 that we're going to be giving back. We're honored to have been identified as a top AFCEA chapter 3 of the last 5 years. What do activities look like for us? Well, just at 11 o'clock this morning, we had Level Up CodeWorks speaking at a virtual luncheon. That is the Air Force's DevSecOps software factory that they're using to create the unified platform. That is the integrated offensive, defensive cyberspace platform that the military is going to be using to support cyber operations. We do virtual education opportunities. We have lunch and learns and tech on tap and events targeting our young people. And most significantly, each year we run the largest military conference in San Antonio called the Alamo ACE, and it happens the week before Thanksgiving. Picture 2,800 people, 120 exhibitors, all exchanging thoughts and ideas on the latest in government and the latest in industry. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. So let's talk about this thing of being a professional and a professional association. Some of you are asking, I'm not even sure this applies to me. I don't see myself as a professional. I'm a coder, or I'm a data security expert. What's it really mean to be a professional? Typically, when we hear the word professional, we tend to think about doctors. We think about lawyers. Maybe we think about military folks. Let's talk about where this word comes from. I'm not one that goes back to the dictionary too often, but the original word is from Latin, and it means to profess or confess. The idea is you are making a public proclamation of your skill, and you're vowing to perform that to the highest standards. Characteristics of professionals. They usually have expertise that requires specialized education. I bet that applies to a lot of the people watching this. It is a profession to adhere to the highest published standards so that folks know, is this person providing top quality service? There's an element of integrity and trustworthiness that's involved here. We inherently trust professionals like firefighters, policemen, doctors, lawyers. And there's an element of public service. Because you provide specialized capabilities and you've made a vow to do that at a high level standard, you are in the business in one dimension or another of serving the public. So what's a professional association? It's typically a nonprofit that performs 3 functions. It's going to promote a particular profession. It's going to promote the interests of individuals that are in that profession. And lastly, it's going to support the public interest. Now, it still begs the question, even if you say, okay, I guess I'm someone who is a professional. I don't just do a job, but yeah, I identify with that and I want to be considered a professional. And still many folks don't engage with a professional association. Why not? Typically, there are three things that I hear. One, I don't have time. I am so busy with my business or building my career that I don't have time for a professional association. My answer to that would be the accuracy of that assessment depends on whether or not you've really thought about how much time is a professional association going to take, and what am I going to get from that? What's the expected payoff for that time that I've given to the association? If I'm going to a luncheon once a month for an hour, that's not a huge time investment, and you might get a lot out of it. What's the second reason? Well, I don't have an extra $50 a year to throw at this organization. I can't spend $1 for my new business, or I'm just getting started and it doesn't fit into my budget. One more time, same answer. It really depends on what's the costs that are associated and what's the expected payoff for that cost. And then lastly, there are so many of these associations out there. How do I know which one's the right one for me? Well, frankly, that's a research question, and I'm going to help you figure that out. So let's look at the positive side. What are some reasons that people do want to get involved in professional development and engagement? The first one is educational. It is an opportunity to learn about the latest in technology, relevant organizations, who are the movers and shakers, and what are the processes that are at work in the industry that I'm associated with. Most of you all watching have probably learned a lot that's useful from Capital Factory and this Defense Academy about how to do business with the defense industry. Professional associations provide that type of knowledge. And more importantly, you get access to the very best minds and the very latest best practices in the field. Secondly, it's a chance to build the network. You get an opportunity through professional association to meet people you have not met before. And that person might be a potential business partner who has some capabilities that can complement you. They might be a client. You might be talking to a customer. They might be an employee, someone that you would want to bring onto your team, or they might be a future employer, someone who you might go to work for or who might be interested in buying that startup from you. Success rests on two things. One, you need to be capable and knowledgeable. That's what you know. But it's multiplied exponentially by who you know. And professional associations help you build out that network. Professional associations give an opportunity to gain some new insights. You break away from your day-to-day and the grind and what you're doing to think about and focus on and incorporate some new ideas and to think about how that might apply to what you're doing. Bottom line, it helps you perform better for those you are serving. There's also some intangibles that are important to think about. It's an opportunity to give back. So there are opportunities through professional associations to share lessons learned. It's where people who have been in the business for decades have an opportunity to talk with young professionals. And whichever side of that you might be on, you're going to get something out of it. Whether it is learning some lessons that someone has learned the hard way, or maybe it's providing a fresh perspective to someone else. It's test driving an idea across others in your industry or your sector. You have an opportunity to help shape where your profession is going by writing guidelines and pamphlets and making resources available to make the entire profession better. And as with Alamo AFCEA, a lot of people that are in our organization are part of it because they're passionate about helping young people with STEM education, or they really want to give back to those veterans who've served their country before. So don't underestimate that. All of this can lead to a strong sense of personal satisfaction. And as you think about where you're going in your career and where you want to be in life, that's a key differentiator between people who spring out of bed in the morning and are motivated and ready to make something happen, and those who are showing up to work and punching the clock and just doing a job. Also, very important, reputation. When you put a professional association's name or logo on your resume or your website, it's telling people, I take pride in my profession, I'm invested in my own professional development, and I'm committed to standards of excellence. Collectively, those of us in a professional association all subscribe to a key belief, and that is when our profession raises its game, we all benefit. So let's get to this question about which one. There are a bazillion professional associations out there. Some of them are focused on education. certification, getting you the right letters after your name to say, yeah, I really know about this topic. I've been doing cybersecurity and cyber warfare for years, but when I left the military, no one in the civilian world knew that. So I went to ISC squared and I got a CISSP. It took a lot of hours of study and some tough exams, but it said, yes, this person is a certified information systems security professional. Associations can help you with those certifications and help you with continuing education. Some, like the Association of the U.S. Army or the Air Force Association, might help you with a potential customer base because they are composed of and cater to the interests of target government organizations. And there are various organizations that focus in various areas. So how do you sort through that? 3 steps. Number 1, think about what your goals are. When you're starting out, or if you're making a career change, certification is going to be important to you. It's a standard that says, yes, this person has a basic level of information about a subject. As you go on in your career or you continue along the path, you're going to want continuing education to pick up the latest in developments. You need to stay current. It's an opportunity to exchange ideas with other professionals. And as I mentioned earlier with networking, it's a great opportunity to meet potential partners, clients, and employees. For many of our members, that's their key reason for belonging to a professional association, for that networking value add. As an individual, you have a speaking opportunity. This is an opportunity to get up on a platform and share what you know or share what your corporate capabilities are. Whether that's speaking at a virtual lunch and learn or at a conference, it's an opportunity to showcase you and your company and what you bring to the table. There are leadership opportunities, particularly for those who are early in their career, to get an opportunity leading a group in a group that's relevant and makes a difference. Advocacy is important to some for promoting the interests and the values of their profession or their community. We talked about branding for yourself and for your company and an opportunity for public service. But go through this list and figure out what's important to you, and you probably need to prioritize that. Then take a look at some target organizations that might meet those needs and are working in the field or with the community that you're interested in. And as you're doing that, I'd give you some pieces of advice. Number 1, don't rush to judgment. It takes a while to figure out and to learn about an organization. All professional associations are complex and they're multifaceted, and you don't know them just through one interaction or talking to one person. So take some time to figure them out. Start by going to their website, scour the website and learn all you can learn there, and then go to some meetings and events. And you see I underlined the letter S because you're not going to get it in one exchange. Go to 2 or 3 or 4 different types of events and see what you think there. Talk to ordinary members and ask them, hey, I'm looking at this organization. Tell me about your experience. How long have you been a member? What do you think about it? Talk to the leaders. You're probably going to hear different things from the members than you will from the leaders because of the difference in perspectives and the different level of engagement. Both points of view are important. Then do some reflection. Is the subject matter that's being covered or addressed by this organization relevant to me and my goals and my organization and where I'm going? Are there benefits that are valuable to me? And understand what those benefits are. There are a lot of benefits that members don't take advantage of them because they don't know about them. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, are these my peeps? Are these the kind of people that I want to connect with, that I want to spend my time with? Once you've made a decision that you want to join a particular professional association, and there may be more than one, then you've got a couple other decisions to make. First of all, do you dip your toes in or are you going to dive in? That is, how much time and money are you going to spend with this organization? And the answer is going to depend on what your needs are and what the organization can provide. There is no right answer, but you do need to think about that consciously. Make sure you understand everything they have to offer. And remember, oftentimes what you get out of an organization is going to directly be reflected by what you put into it. If you pay a $25 membership fee and you never haunt the door or read the emails or read the magazine again for a year, you're not going to get a lot out of that professional association. If you show up for meetings and you talk to speakers and you engage in the networking events, you'll probably get more out of it. Remember also that building relationships takes time. You want to build your network, but you're not going to do that through a single engagement. It's going to take you some time to develop relationships and develop trust. And as you make the decision, yes, I want to plug into organization X, I'm going to tell you to put a calendar reminder to yourself and set it for 11 months out. And at that 11-month point, when you get a reminder pop up, take a little bit of time and reflect. Okay, what have I gotten out of this? Should I be investing more time or more interest in it? Or have I decided that maybe this organization is not a great fit for me? And why do I say 11 months? Because your membership dues are probably going to come up at the 12-month point. So that's something to think about. Professionals belong to professional associations. That is true. And so if you want to see yourself as a professional and you want others to see you as a professional, I strongly encourage you to join a professional association. And with that, I guess I will turn it back to Kevin and maybe Bill and take some time for Q&A.
So Kevin actually had to run to a meeting. I can lead the Q&A. It looks like we don't have any questions yet. Highly encourage you guys to put your questions for either Bill or Rick in the chat here. And we are going to transition over to Sococo Networking here pretty soon, but we'll give it a couple minutes for anyone to type their questions out.
Okay, that sounds good. I would, is Bill Robinson with us?
I am. Yes,
Fantastic.
Sir.
So for those who are thinking and have questions, I will tell you, Bill's the guy to ask. Number one, he's the guy who taught me about networking. Number two, not only does he understand membership and the value of associations from his role at the chapter, but he also serves on AFCEA International's board of directors and is a co-chair of the AFCEA International membership committee. So he's one that can answer those questions. If we don't have any questions, I might toss an open-ended one to Bill. Bill, what did I forget, or what else should folks think about when they're considering whether they might want to join a professional association?
You know, Rick, you did a wonderful job pointing out a lot of the folks that are part of this event here today come from various backgrounds, and they may not have a DoD following and understand AFCEA, which is obviously one of the larger organizations that reason why we've invested our time with that. But you had a slide up there that really opens the door to whatever their technical capabilities are. There are companies that are doing artificial intelligence today, robotics and so forth, and there are professional associations that apply to those communities, manufacturing organizations and whatnot. So whatever ones apply to your capability, your technology, and or where you want to go with your company, just know your business development folks, your engineers, your specialists in your company, there are organizations they should join to make them a better employee and to help further your company's goals and capabilities. So definitely take advantage of what Rick mentioned, investigate the different professional associations. Rick, I think you did a great job of giving them a lot to think about. Great,
thanks so much.
Awesome. So we actually do have some questions coming in. One from AlloSense. Hi, Rick. With the Space Force getting traction, is AFCEA creating new programs?
The short answer is we're not creating new programs yet, but it illustrates yet another value of a professional association. I got a phone call yesterday from someone senior at JBSA. San Antonio is being considered as one of the homes of the new Space Command. And I was asked, hey, would you help us work on this proposal? Well, sure, I'd be glad to. As a connecting organization, professional associations can do that for you. I think as the Space Command gets established and the Space Force gets its feet under it, there is clearly going to be an intersection there between those in the space community and those in the cyber and IT community. Candidly, we haven't quite figured that out yet, but we'll certainly be thinking about that as we move forward.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Rick. We got one more question. It is, can I join AFCEA as an individual, but use my membership to make connections for my business? I don't own the business. I just work there.
Absolutely. Bill, I'm going to toss this softball to you.
Yeah, positively. Every member of your company is really an advocate for your company, right? So they have the capability. So the more you're supporting an individual who joins a professional association, when you come to events and you network, we all like to know who everybody's working for, their capabilities. So we do a lot of networking events to do that, to help you further your company's capabilities, bring other teaming partners together with your corporate leadership. And it's a great way to start working together. You've actually adopted a new family, and you'll find a professional associate. We're a nonprofit, right? So we do this voluntarily, and we all like to help each other out because it definitely pays in the end.
Awesome. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have today. I really appreciate you two gentlemen for all of your time and AFCEA's partnership. Really appreciate it. We're going to go and take you down now, and we're going to transition over to Sococo networking. So let me do some screen rearranging here. So we are going to go ahead and head to Sococo now. We have reached the halfway point for Defense Academy. This is the end of day 2. Thank you to all the speakers today and yesterday. Really enjoyed having you on. That being said, we do have 2 more days of programming. This is kind of halftime, if you will. Another recap email will go on later today after networking, and that will be jam-packed with all of the slides from today, contact info from all the speakers, and all the resources that you can tap into. And with that being said, we will see you tomorrow. Go ahead and head to Sococo. The invite should be in your email inbox, and we can't wait to network with you. Have a great day, and we'll see you in Sococo.